It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight, live from Belfast for a special programme. I'm Jonathan Samuels. Coming up, we'll be finding out what matters most to people here in Northern Ireland with just a week and a half to go until the election.
Like my friends, I ask them, like, do you know who you're going to vote for? Just in a conversation, but they don't know either. Young people don't know.
Brexit has been skimmed over and the main parties are tiptoeing around that.
They have so many promises, but they don't really fulfill the promises, and I don't think they're looking at the important issue.
On the show tonight, we'll be joined by a panel of young voters, students and people setting out on their early career paths as we ask about the issues that could decide their vote. I'll speak to small business owners about Brexit and the impact it's having on their lives and livelihoods. And we'll find out why Northern Ireland has become the place to be for the film and TV industries. All that to come and much more on the UK Tonight. Hello and a very good evening from Queen's University here in Belfast. We'll be hearing from students and other guests here throughout the show this evening as election campaigning reaches its final full week. But before we get on to all of that, let's take a look at the stories dominating the headlines this evening. A security guard has gone on trial accused of plotting to kidnap, rape and murder the TV presenter Holly Willoughby. 37-year-old Gavin Plum is alleged to have devised the plot after developing an obsession with the presenter. A court today heard how he had more than 10,000 images of the 43-year-old on his phone. Our crime correspondent Martin Brunt joins me now. Martin, what else did the court hear?
Before the trial even begun, the judge told jurors that all of them probably knew something about the alleged victim, but they had to put all of that out of their mind, he said, and make their decision ultimately on the evidence that they were going to hear over the next 2 weeks. But one witness they won't be hearing from is Holly Willoughby herself. She isn't being called to give evidence, though she has waived her right to anonymity throughout this trial. The defendant, Gavin Plum, well, he sat in the dock listening as the prosecutor began an outline of the case, saying how his plot to kidnap, rape and murder Holly Willoughby started to unravel when he began talking online to a man he thought he was recruiting to help him in that plot, but he turned out to be an undercover police officer based in the USA. According to the prosecution, Gavin Plum told the officer he was going to break into Holly Willoughby's home, he was going to knock her out with chloroform, kidnap and rape her, and then cut her throat. He allegedly told another potential recruit online, getting her has been my ultimate fantasy for far too long. Fantasy is enough anymore. It's not enough anymore. I need the real thing. Then the prosecutor, Alison Morgan Casey, she said this to the jury: it was not just the ramblings of a fantasist, because the defendant's planning was interrupted. He never got to the point of actually attacking Miss Willoughby with the equipment he had purchased to carry out that attack. She said it wasn't a fantasy, it was a very real plot. So that's a broad outline today from the prosecution. Tomorrow the jurors will start hearing from the first witnesses in the case, and the whole trial's likely to last probably a couple of weeks.
Martin in Chelmsford, thank you. Princess Anne is being treated for minor injuries and a concussion. Buckingham Palace said she was taken to hospital after an incident on Sunday evening on the Gatcombe Park estate in Gloucestershire. It's understood emergency services were called to the scene to treat injuries believed to have been caused by an impact with a horse's head or leg. Sky's royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills has more.
Just over a week ago, we saw how accomplished Princess Anne is when it comes to riding horses, taking part in the procession at Trooping the Colour. But now it seems a freak accident at home has left her in hospital. Buckingham Palace said the Princess Royal has sustained minor injuries and concussion following an incident on the Gatcombe Park estate yesterday evening. Her Royal Highness remains in Southmead Hospital, Bristol, as a precautionary measure for observation and is expected to make a full and swift recovery. The King has been kept closely informed and joins the whole royal family in sending his fondest love and well wishes to the Princess for a speedy recovery. The injuries were to her head, and while it's not exactly clear what happened, it appears she may have been kicked or headbutted by a horse. But as with any concussion case, she will be treated with caution. Princess Anne, like the rest of the royal family, was brought up around horses, and for her it's been a huge passion. She even competed in the Olympics. But royal duties since then have come first. Known as one of the hardest working royals, her help invaluable in the months when the King couldn't do public engagements because of his cancer diagnosis.
Over the years, Princess Anne has affectionately gained that reputation as being a no-nonsense royal. She doesn't seem to particularly like the spotlight or a fuss. But as an important senior working royal, the palace clearly decided they had to put out this statement about her health, especially as she remains under the observation of doctors in hospital.
Her engagements for this week have been cancelled, and it's understood she won't be travelling to Canada on behalf of the King later this week. But the palace continued to stress her ongoing hospital stay is a precaution for a woman not used to letting anything hold her back. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News at Buckingham Palace.
So we are here at the Students' Union at Queen's University, joined tonight by students, business owners, community groups as well. Belfast, of course, may be a long way from Westminster, but decisions made there can have a huge impact here, as we'll be finding out during the programme this evening. More than 25 years after the Good Friday Agreement, in this election, like others before it, the constitutional question still looms large, with the fundamental question of where Northern Ireland's future lies, in the United Kingdom or in a united Ireland. Well, we're joined this evening by a panel of young voters, and we'll be getting their views on that and the issues that matter most to them in a minute. But first, our senior Ireland correspondent, David Blevins, is with me. Great to see you, David. And we're in a fantastic building. This, the new Students' Union, only opened a couple of years ago. And somewhere your son knows very well. He's just graduated from here, hasn't he?
Yes, much to the delight of his parents, an academic miracle.
Well done, James. That is a good note to start on. So the general election is getting very close. Tell me, David, what it is for the voters here that is most pressing.
I think there are two bespoke issues. The first being the long shadow of Brexit. You'll remember that the Brexit deal resulted in a trade border between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. That's hugely challenging, particularly for the Democratic Unionist Party, who campaigned hard for Brexit but are deeply unhappy about the consequences of it. And all of that, I suppose, is a reminder that not very long ago, it was the DUP who kept a minority Tory government in power in Westminster when Theresa May failed to win an outright majority. And all of those ongoing issues around Brexit, I think, feed into that age-old constitutional question. If Sinn Féin, for example, becomes the largest party in Northern Ireland at Westminster, not only will most Northern Ireland seats be unoccupied, because, of course, the party abstains, it doesn't take its seats in opposition to British rule in Northern Ireland, but it will absolutely increase calls and demands on the new government for a referendum on Irish unity. But we found an unusual cohesion among the main political parties in Northern Ireland today. Remember, people here don't really vote for the Tories or for Labour or for Lib Dem, but they've no shortage of choice in terms of other parties. And they were united when we sat down with them this morning, political figures from each of them, in their condemnation of the Tories for the impact of Brexit on Northern Ireland. Let's listen to what they had to say. There is always tension brewing in the politics of Northern Ireland. 5 main parties are contesting the general election here. We invited leading figures from each of them to sit down for a chat.
Michelle O'Neill from Sinn Féin and also First Minister of Northern Ireland.
I'm Emma Little-Pengelly, DUP, and I'm Deputy First Minister of Northern Ireland.
So I'm Doug Beattie, I'm the leader of the Ulster Unionist Party.
I'm Naomi Long and I'm leader of the Alliance Party in Northern Ireland.
I'm Colin Eastwood.
Leader of the SDLP.
Michelle O'Neill, give us 3 words that describe your party. Does it matter to people in Northern Ireland if it's a Tory government or a Labour government at the end of the day?
Well, my interest in whoever occupies number 10 Downing Street is just how they conduct themselves in terms of their role as co-guarantor of our peace agreement. The Tories have played fast and loose with the Good Friday Agreement the whole way through their tenure, and Brexit's actually a real practical example. They have starved our public services of much needed funding. They have never acted in the interests of the people here. So I could only hope that on the other end of this election that we have a constructive relationship with whoever occupies number 10.
I think that the Conservative Party in the UK government botched Brexit, and Northern Ireland was the victim of that. We called out the Conservative Party on this at every single stage. But of course, regardless of who is in government, the DUP will be standing up for Northern Ireland. That's an important role, regardless of who sits in the seat of Prime Minister and who is in this government.
Why is every election in Northern Ireland still dominated by the question of whether we should be in the United Kingdom or part of a united Ireland?
We want a united community, but the long-term vision for that united community is within the United Kingdom. Other people want a united community, but their long-term vision for that is within a united Ireland. So for me, this constitutional question is still important because we are still in a society which is driven by deep and differing aspirations.
The Good Friday Agreement gave us a democratic route, actually, to decide the future of Ireland. And for me, it's about a process of reconciliation. We want to bring people together. I want to see a united Ireland, and we will work every day to do that. But we respect that other people have a different view, and sometime in the future, we'll have to decide this democratically.
It's very easy to gather votes if you say that you're for United Ireland or you're for the United Kingdom. You can almost wrap yourself in a flag and then expect people will vote along those tribal lines. And I think one of the exciting things that's happened in Northern Ireland over the last 10 to 15 years it's just the number of people who have migrated away from that kind of politics and towards a party like Alliance, which offers a different vision for the future.
Another election in the shadow of Brexit. 5 leaders debating the way ahead for Northern Ireland. David Blevins, Sky News in Belfast.
Let's bring in our young voters panel for this evening. The Student Union President here at Queen's University, Beth Elder, joins us, as does Salim Ushman. He's studying international relations here at Queen's, and Sabrina Baptista is also here. She's completing A-levels at Portadown College in County Armagh. Great to see you all. Thank you very much for taking time out to come and have a chat. And Beth, perhaps we can start with you. You run the Students' Union here. It's a big job. How important is the general election for students here, for young people in Northern Ireland?
Yeah, I think it's probably unsurprising that I think, and most of the young people that I come into contact with, think that it's extremely important. And I think the first and foremost thing that I would probably say is that it's really important that young people get out and vote. I think there's probably a bit of an idea that one vote can't make a difference here in Northern Ireland, but it absolutely can. Here, one vote is never only one vote. You know, you can go, for example, I live with 4 other people, and when I go home, I come home and I talk about how I'm voting in this upcoming general election, and 3 of my housemates have never voted before, and now that in this general election they will be voting. So one vote is never just one vote. It's actually your sphere of influence around you. You can influence the people around you to make sure to vote. So I think it's so important that young people are doing that. But then also on the same lines, you know, things like cost of living, things like the NHS pressures, things like sustainability of a future for young people in Northern Ireland, again, are extremely important. Our young people are looking more and more into the future than they ever have before. They're growing up younger and faster. They're no longer, you know, getting into politics and the idea of a future whenever they're 30. It's now when they're 16, so it's really important.
That, isn't it? So you've been campaigning here to try and remind people how important it is to vote. And Salim, what are the issues for you as a young person? What's top of your agenda in terms of what you want your politicians to be doing?
As a young person, and especially as an international student, I see the issues and I face the issues that young people all over the North and all over the UK face as well. And it's mostly the cost of living crisis. It's very unfair to see students having to choose between having food on the table or heating their houses. And I don't think that that's a choice any student should have to make. And I think we saw the clip of politicians from the North talking about what their priorities are. And what was frustrating for me was that it was mostly rhetoric. and not enough policies. They didn't mention young people. They didn't mention education. They didn't mention public services. And I think those are the things that the government needs to invest in. We need to invest in our young people. We need to invest in the education system. And of course, there's so many issues apart from the constitutional question that need to be addressed. We are not talking about how the NHS is in shambles. We're not talking about the hostile environment we're creating for international students and immigrants. And I just hope to see a more welcoming environment being created by the next government and make sure that it's a government which talks about all of us.
Yeah, and you're an international student, as you say. You've got the right to vote here. You want to make your future in Northern Ireland, which is great.
Yes.
You talked about the constitution question. Just very quickly, as someone who's looking to the future, do you think it's less and less important nowadays, that old history of how people used to vote, voting like their parents?
I think as a young person, it's not something that I would, talk about as much when it comes to who to choose to, guide our future, who is going to be my MP in Parliament. It's more about what their policies are for my future rather than the future of the country, because there's more pressing issues right now that need to be addressed in the short term. It's just very frustrating to see people just banging on sectarian lines and just asking people to vote on those lines rather than addressing actual pressing issues.
You're nodding away there, Sabrina. Is that something you agree with? Do you think young people here believe that they're Northern Irish first as opposed to unionist? Or,
I 100% agree. I come from I'm a first-generation immigrant, so I kind of never grew up with that kind of background, so I never really had that sectarian. I also went to a Catholic primary school and then went to predominantly Protestant junior high school and then high school, so I kind of got a lot of perspective, and I think generally people are moving away from that kind of perspective. I think people are focused on things like the NHS, cost of living crisis, especially at the age of going to university, people moving away from home, and not everyone has the privilege of having parental support. I think people are much more focused on things like that. I know personally that I work with a lot of organisations that also advocate for votes at 16. I think we look at countries like Wales and Scotland and we kind of envy them because we kind of don't have that right. Obviously England doesn't have it either, but it's kind of hard to look at other countries and not compare ourselves to them, especially whenever we're kind of all in the same boat. I think things like immigration as well are extremely important. I think the fear-mongering around immigration is extremely concerning as a first-generation immigrant, and obviously as an international student, there's no way that we should feel fear, especially I was born here. I have no other, I've went back to my mother's country and I didn't feel at home. But then when I came here, this felt like home, and I don't want to live in a country where I'm not treated as a citizen for the only place that I've ever knew my whole life. So I think issues like that are definitely much more important than things like United Ireland or staying within the United Kingdom. And I think it's especially now harder than ever for political parties to cling on to that identity because there's so much more. There's no. It's not just about your stance on where Northern Ireland lays, whether it's in a union with Ireland or in the union with the United Kingdom. I think there's definitely so much more to unravel. So
yeah, and I know none of you, because I've asked you already if you want to talk about how you're going to vote. You've all politely declined, which is absolutely fine. But there is a party, isn't there now, the Alliance Party, that remains neutral on that issue, and they seem to be gaining popularity. Would you like to see them do well?
I think I'd like to see any party who focuses on the issues that are important for young people do well. As you kind of heard, there's a common thread of things like cost of living. And in that kind of video that was played there before, I didn't hear any of the politicians talking about cost of living or education. I mean, like you've kind of heard already, there's kind of two sides to it. Young people are looking forward to cost of living both in the now. So, can I afford to eat tomorrow? Can I afford to heat my home?
And you have free food that you give to students here, don't you?
Yeah. So the students who are struggling, they can come into the Students' Union and avail of our refill pantry, which is essentially a food bank that our students queue up for every day of the week. And we've had over 17,000 visits to that, which, why aren't politicians addressing these issues? But then also looking at cost of living in a long-term sense, where people are thinking, can I afford to go into an education system that sets me up for a life of debt? Can I afford to go into an education system that probably doesn't give me good graduate outcomes to work in this economy in Northern Ireland? Can I afford to raise a family here in an NHS that cannot support me or my family? Young people are looking for reasons to stay in the here and now, but they're also looking for reasons to stay in the future to raise their families and have their lives here. So,
do you think, Simon, that there is a disillusionment then with politicians, with political leaders, not only in Westminster but in Stormont as well?
I feel like this generation is more politically aware than previous generations, and the conversations that I've had with my friends and other people shows that they are really well informed. They've been going through manifestos, they've been looking at what party leaders say, and a lot of them know who they're going to vote for. And those that don't, they are going to make a choice, make an informed choice by the time the election date comes around. So.
Yeah.
That's why also I campaign quite a lot for votes at 16. I think there's a lot of talk about young people don't know what they're talking about, you know, they're not educated, but I guarantee you there's probably a 16-year-old out there that's more educated than a 50-year-old that's been voting for, you know, quite a long time. So I think young people, especially with this new generation of like technology, having all this information at your fingertips, I think it's definitely helped young people become more informed and make better decisions. And like, another issue that I've also seen after the collapse of Stormont, I think, was people were kind of fed up of the way our political system is as well. Like, it's not right that one political party can completely drag down the whole of Stormont. So it's obviously not just about the constitutional debate, it's also about how our government is run. You know, if this is a coalition, then it has to, you can't just let one party completely knock it down. And then there's also the question of what happens if Alliance becomes the second largest party. Like, I think there's so many more questions other than just the United Ireland of like what is to happen with Northern Ireland's future. But I think that young people are just more focused on things that are actually affecting their day-to-day life. I think these things obviously are in the future, maybe the nearby future, but I think people are more focused about tomorrow than 10 years. Yeah, so I think it's definitely about something.
I'm kind of hoping that maybe you'll all go into politics in the not too distant future. I think we could all benefit from that. And Beth, why don't we end where we started with that appeal, if you like? It's a plea, really, isn't it, to young people not to be disillusioned, not to be fed up with politics, not to feel that their voice isn't being heard, because they've got a way to change that, haven't they?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, totally. Whenever you look at the number of young people we have here in Northern Ireland who are registered to vote, it's in excess, in the UK, sorry, is in excess of 1 million. And if we can boost up the numbers of people in Northern Ireland who go out and turn up and vote, then we're going to see political parties that are representing the things that we care about, the cost of living issues, the NHS waiting times, immigration policies. We're going to see, hopefully, change that will move away from that rhetoric and towards actual policy change, actual policy implementation. But that hinges on young people using their voice, you know, being reminded that they're the future of the society and going out there and make it a thing, go with your friends, you know, get out there and vote. Because your vote makes a difference.
There's an idea. Excellent. Well, the union has made us very welcome today, so thank you very much for that, and thank you all of you for that fascinating discussion, and happy voting next week. All right, thanks a lot. Plenty more still to come on the UK tonight. Do stay with us. What impact is Brexit having on businesses here in Northern Ireland? We'll speak to some small business owners next, and we'll find out why Northern Ireland's film and TV industry is thriving.
Behind that door.
Well, what are you hearing? A summer election, July 4th of July. We will be live. Inflation, the cost of living crisis.
He's repeatedly said
it's projected to go higher.
absolutely certainly.
Now is the moment. The optics, the decision, the gamble.
All of that will be in play.
The question, of course, is: are you happy it's called an election?
We know that one of the best bits of being on holiday is playing in the swimming pool and being around water. And it's really important that you do everything you can to keep your children safe. And that's why we've launched this campaign today, because we know that there are certain colours of swimwear which are not safe in deep water in particular. So there's 3 things that we're doing with this campaign that we're launching today. Firstly is to raise awareness of the issue. So colours that can't be seen in the water are blues, whites and light greys. Secondly, we're asking parents to really think about the colour of swimwear that they pack for their children for their summer holidays this year. So think about bright colours, oranges, greens, reds, neons, lots of options out there. And thirdly, we're asking everyone to sign our petition. It's on change.org today, calling on the government to legislate really against these unseeable colours, because as we said, they really are invisible in deep water and in swimming pools. And actually most swimwear that parents own is in exactly the worst colours for child safety. So 2/3 of parents know that their children are likely to be wearing navies, blues, whites and greys. So really it's a chance for us to spread this message today and ask people to check their swimwear, have a look at the brighter colours you've got, maybe swap with other families if you need to for holidays, or perhaps even buy some new swimwear to make sure your children are as visible and as safe as possible this summer. And we haven't yet found a retailer that is not selling those dangerous colours. So really, it's a real opportunity for parents to do that little extra thing. As you say, it's quite, there's a lot to think about, isn't there, on holiday anyway? Hard to keep your eye on 2 children at the same time, or 3, or however many you've got. So every little bit you can do to help keep them safe, we think is worth knowing about and worth doing this summer. We had an article that was shared with us last year, actually, on the subject, and it was quite unbelievable, which is why we redid the research ourselves to see for ourselves how much of an issue this is. And as you saw from the pictures, it really is difficult to see those colours in the water.
Hello again, welcome back. You're watching the UK Tonight. We are live in Belfast with 10 days to go until the election. Now, the last time the UK went to the polls for a general election, Brexit, of course, was at the heart of the campaigning, with Boris Johnson standing on a promise to get Brexit done. Well, what a difference an election makes. This time round, it's barely been mentioned. And while for many people in the UK it might feel like things have moved on, Northern Ireland is one of the places where it remains a very live issue, with an internal trade border in the Irish Sea. So, a post-Brexit legal agreement known as the Windsor Framework between the European Union and the UK means Northern Ireland remains in the EU single market for goods. This puts in place a de facto trade border in the Irish Sea for goods moving to Northern Ireland from Great Britain. To avoid a hard border, goods are split into 2 different lanes. Those destined only for Northern Ireland go into the green lane with reduced checks, while those destined for the EU and Ireland go into the red lane and are subject to customs procedures. But the Safeguarding the Union deal gave some concessions to the DUP, which saw power sharing at Stormont restored. So I'm joined this evening by 3 small business owners. Farmer Damien McGennity, he's also a campaigner for Borders Communities Against Brexit. Also with us, the co-owner and manager of Charlie's Barn in Enniskillen, Una Burns, and the owner of Hillmount Garden Centre, Robin Mercer, also here with us. A very good evening to all of you. Thank you for taking the time out on this beautiful evening to come and talk to us in the Students' Union. Damien, perhaps we can start with you. We're heading to the polls next week. What for you is the #1 issue?
I suppose, because Westminster's so removed from us and our issues are minor and minuscule, we're still 3% of the UK population, we need to see that an incoming Labour government will actually address some of the difficult issues around Brexit. While we have a deal on trade, we have no deal on services. And I think that a lot of the sticky issues that come up with medicines, with veterinary and other things, that there are simple agreements that a new government with a new authority can put in place to allow trade to happen more freer. The cost of living is still a huge issue. Energy cost. There's no one in this campaign has talked about how we as consumers are being fleeced by electricity companies. Oil prices are back below what they were before COVID and before the Ukraine war. And, the authority of a new Labour administration, I would love to see them really tackle those issues
So
centrally.
how are they going to do that, though? When it comes to Brexit, what do you believe, if it is a Labour government, they could do to make things easier?
Well, there are side agreements that they can do with the EU. They could agree to follow psychosanitary rules, which would mean that veterinary products and animal products that come into the UK and what the UK would export would be of the same standard. And that would mean businesses who are selling and buying products in those areas, it would mean that red tape would be gone, and it would actually remove a lot of the issues that people are complaining about here. in terms of the border in the Irish Sea.
Well, I'll ask Robin about that in a moment. But Una, perhaps we can turn to you next. For you, the issue is not necessarily all Brexit related, but you're still struggling in many ways, and you need politicians to know about it.
Absolutely, and picking up on just what you said there about energy costs, our electricity bill has went up by 300% in comparison.
300%?
In comparison to a bill we received 2 years ago. And that is for a bar that doesn't serve food. So you can only imagine if you had a restaurant, you had a kitchen, those costs are simply crippling businesses. And we are not in a position to keep absorbing those costs. But equally, we can't pass that on to the consumer. On top of that, the rates, our rates are one of the highest in the UK. And actually, in comparison to some, even in the City of London, our rates are higher. It's just not sustainable. And I suppose the big issue as well is VAT. Our VAT rate is one of the highest in Western Europe. And the government need to put in place some measures, a strategy to make this a sustainable business model if they are to keep the hospitality industry alive and also attract new, fresh blood, fresh ideas.
Yeah, which is so important, isn't it? Of course.
Absolutely.
And Robin, you've got garden centres, I believe I'm right in saying, 3 of which are here in Northern Ireland, 1 in England?
One in Cheshire as well.
Yeah.
Honestly,
so how has Brexit affected your business then?
Really, garden centres were such a wide range of products that we were stocking. And, we started off OK. We thought Brexit, 3 months and it'll go away, but it's not going away. It's actually getting worse. We're finding a lot of our suppliers...
So even the tweaks that have been done over the last few months, they're still not helping you?
Honestly, it's even in the last month, there's a new ruling coming out about grass seed. We were warned to overstock grass seed at the moment. The new ruling is that the phytosanitary certificate the grass seed comes from Germany to England with a phytosanitary certificate. Then when it gets to England, what happens is it gets blended, for front garden, back garden, whatever it is. That grass seed then has to go to the ministry for 5 weeks to grow it before they'll issue another phytosanitary certificate before they can release the grass seed, put numbers in the boxes to get it back to us. This is prime time. We do not need, that's only one item. As far as plants goes, our growers in England, especially that weather, they will not risk sending plants over here. They can get held up at the border, they can held up at the customs, and you just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, so it can be crippling, can't it, for people? If customers and clients are refusing to do business with you, it can be really difficult.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's the situation where we are with Brexit. Unfortunately, there's been winners and there's been losers. And this withdrawal agreement was a very complex document. I would argue it didn't need to be as complex. Ireland has done well in terms of we have a free border, we have free trade on the island of Ireland, which is crucially important. But a new Labour administration, I believe, has that authority to go to Brussels and to iron out some of these issues and put in a veterinary agreement.
Not everyone here will be happy. Not everyone here will be happy about that, will they?
Well, I suppose people who are still very much of the view that they want a Puritan Brexit. But we live in the real world. We do business, we trade with one another. And for those things to work, we have seen that the UK economy has suffered at least 3% of their GDP. It's an economy that's not doing well. It's very indebted. And how the UK can grow that economy is by doing these deals to help business to get on and trade.
Una, what are your hopes for the future?
I would hope the government listen to the cries of the hospitality industry, the cries of those that are closing their doors and aren't reopening them again, and to recognise the value that hospitality plays, not only in our tourism sector, but to the whole economy, and to recognise that skill shortage and really put in place strategies and measures to address these issues that are currently crippling our hospitality industry. You look in the paper every day and there's another business closing. And what we want to really see is more and more opening and to really make Northern Ireland thrive.
Yeah, and Robin, finally, do you worry sometimes that perhaps MPs here, 18 of them, don't have enough influence in Westminster when it comes to the issues that you've got? We know, for example, Sinn Féin don't take their seats.
Yeah, it's, as far as it goes, the issue is, OK, as far as the food industry goes, they have the backing, and they really are, but the rest of the garden centres and shops, just in general, we're only a small minority, and we are not getting the say that we need to get all the stock through.
OK, thank you all. And Una, you famously did a viral video, didn't you, last year? A Christmas ad for the pub. along the lines of the John Lewis ad, only homemade. We featured it on Sky News. Are you going to do one this year for us all to enjoy?
I do remember I was speaking to you back in December, and the plan is to release one, but we have no ideas as to what that'll look like yet.
No. All right, well, we look forward to that. Thank you all very much. Great to get your views and thoughts as we head towards the general election. Plenty more still to come on the UK Tonight, live here in Belfast, including why victims of the Troubles are calling on the next government to scrap the Legacy Act. Plus, I've been out talking to people here in Belfast about the issues which matter most to them before they head to the polls in just 10 days' time. Do stay with us. Hello again, welcome back to the UK Tonight. We're live at Queen's University in Belfast. Now, victims of the Troubles have called on the next government to scrap the controversial Legacy Act, a law which effectively offers conditional immunity for people suspected of crimes committed during the Troubles. Now, all political parties here in Northern Ireland have opposed the Act, which came into effect May the 1st this year. Labour has pledged to repeal it if they are elected next week. Well, I'm joined now by Kieran McAvoy, a Professor of Law and Transitional Justice here at Queen's University in Belfast. Also with us, Kenny Donaldson, the Director of South East Fermanagh Foundation, who support victims and survivors of terrorism, and Shane Laverty, whose brother was killed by the RA whilst on duty in 1972 at the age of just 18. Now, gentlemen, great to have you with us. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Kieran, this is quite complicated, and for people who aren't necessarily across what this is all about. Just explain for us in simple terms, if you could, what it means and where we're at.
OK, where we're at. So we had an agreement here in 2014 to establish a range of mechanisms to deal with the legacy of the conflict, but it didn't include an amnesty. So Boris Johnson gets elected as leader of the Tory party, and he's promising to introduce an amnesty for British soldiers who served here to match an amnesty that applied to British soldiers who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. The problem is no one here wanted it. So no one here signed up to it. It wasn't in the agreement. So Johnson he basically had a balancing act. On the one hand, he could have stuck by the agreement that had been made here with 4 of the 5 local political parties and with the Irish government, or he could tack to the right and he could introduce an amnesty knowing that no one here wanted it. He tacked to the right and introduced an amnesty. And so that mechanism, that process...
But it was an amnesty not only for veterans, it was an amnesty also for people who committed acts of terror.
Exactly. So, and the paramilitary actors, and for Boris Johnson and those who supported it, that was a price worth paying. Now, what's happened since is we've had a challenge to the legality of that legislation, and it's been found to be, the amnesty provision has been found to be unlawful here in the High Court in Belfast. That's gone to the Court of Appeal. The Irish government have also taken the British government to court, to Strasbourg, to the European Court of Human Rights. Very unusual step, but they've done that because they were so angry about what happened. And we have Labour saying if they are elected, they are going to repeal the legislation and return to the principles, at least, of the agreement that was signed in 2014.
OK, you've explained that very well, thank you. Kenny, you work with victims and survivors. What are they saying to you about the Act?
Well, I think what we first need to do is this hasn't come in isolation of other steps prior to. So from 1998, and different people had different perspectives in this country around the Belfast Agreement. It was carried, but with it, prisoners walked free from prison. And at that particular point, justice was murdered for a large percentage of people. In the years that followed, we then had decommissioning of weaponry, which held the ballistics and evidence to many crimes, also then removed. We had on-the-run assurance letters. We had royal prerogatives of mercy. We've had a moratorium, which a former Justice Minister in the Republic of Ireland says exists in terms of pre-1998 crimes in the Republic of Ireland. So all of this has happened prior to the Legacy Act. This is the final piece in the jigsaw. And I'm proud to say that from our constituency's point of view, we have always stood by the rule of law. We oppose amnesties, we oppose statutes of limitation. But the difficulty why we've got to this place in many ways goes to the heart of what we have as our problem in Northern Ireland. There's not a collectivism. There's not actually an insistency that if I'm entitled to justice, truth and accountability, that I also respect my neighbour's right to have likewise. If those voices had been there through all those stages, we may never have got to here. But we're here now. That doesn't mean to say that we're ever going to support something that is absolutely wrong.
OK. Shane, your brother died when he was just 18. You were just 10.
Yeah.
He was a young police officer. He was shot in his patrol car, I believe. Just tell us what it was like when you first heard that news.
Yeah, so it was a Sunday morning. It's not something you forget ever, to be honest with you. I can recall in great detail what exactly happened. So I was in a bedroom with my brother, 2 separate beds either side of the room, and my sister came in and she was very upset, and I was actually pretending to sleep because I didn't want to go to church that morning. And I heard her recalling to my other brother that something had happened to Robert, and I heard her saying that Robert had been shot during the night. And at that point in time, I jumped up out of bed. I was completely in a sense of shock. I was very tearful. It took me a long time to be calmed down. My brother, who was 15 in the other bed, was inconsolable. I then became aware of other people in the house. So I went into the front room. It was full of people I didn't know. Obviously, people had come from police. Clergy were there. The funny thing was, I remember getting dressed. I think somehow I got lost in the mix. I got into my clothes. I went out the front door and I went for a quick walk around what we called the block near my house because I couldn't come to terms with what I'd just heard. So it's about half a mile maybe back round to the house again. So yeah, it was a huge shock and a huge impact on the family.
And you've lived with that forever.
Yeah.
You obviously want to know the truth, the full truth, and want justice. Some will argue that actually what's happened in the past is in the past. Let's draw a line under it, whatever side you're on, whatever happened to you, wherever you're from, and let's look to the future and move on. Yeah. What do you say to people like that?
Well, I would say two things. First of all, I would say pick a member of your family who you're prepared to see taken from you in this way and see how you cope with it. But more importantly, in a sense now, is justice is not time served. Justice is not something which is time bound. Justice is something which is the bedrock of society. And if we're ever going to move forward, I mean, in the election so far, I've heard a lot about health and education, cost of living, obviously the border and the Irish Sea. I haven't heard victims mentioned once, and that is straight up. But at some point where it becomes expedient and convenient to bring victims into the equation, you can bet your bottom dollar it will be brought in.
Yeah. We've just got about a minute left. Kieran, some people will say, you know, this could end up with very elderly people being prosecuted, dragged through the courts, who were just kids at the time. I mean, how do you answer that?
I mean, I think there's a landing zone for all of this. The reality is, under the terms of the Good Friday Agreement, no one was going to jail for more than 2 years anyway. When we were doing some research around this, we discovered that actually the government already have the power to reduce that 2-year maximum to 0. So no one's going to, certainly no state actor, once they're prosecuted, I think the first thing the government will do is they will make sure that no one goes to jail. So that's what you're looking at. But victims are still entitled to have their day in court. For a lot of victims, it's not necessarily the jail time, but it's just about accountability. So if you mix accountability and you mix truth, and Kenny's raised an important point as well, where the government in the Republic of Ireland also need to step up. But if we get to a situation where Labour do win the election, for example, where we have grown-ups in charge of legacy policy, and in that context you bring the Irish government in, you probably have some negotiations with the local political parties again, I think there's a landing zone for all of this which can match truth, justice and accountability.
Will I just add to that as well?
Very quickly.
Yes, sorry. In terms of reconciliation, because it is the Legacy and Reconciliation Act, people need to understand once and for all that if you don't have accountability at the heart of society, reconciliation will continue to prove elusive. Okay. There's no holy grail to reconciliation without going through the hard grind of accountability.
Listen, you've given us lots of food for thought, lots to think about. Thank you all very much indeed. Good to see you. Coming up after the break here on the UK Tonight, we'll be speaking to the Chief Executive of Studio Ulster about why Northern Ireland's film and TV industry is thriving.
And coming up on The World with me, Yalda Hakim, why is Vladimir Putin staying silent over religious tensions in his country? We assess the fallout from yesterday's deadly attack in Dagestan, and Moscow lashes out at Washington over an attack in Crimea and vows to respond. The big question, how? That's all coming up at 9.
I'm Martin Brunt, and I'm Sky's crime correspondent. My most memorable story was, and still is, the disappearance of Madeleine McCann.
Please, please do not hurt her. Please give our little girl back.
We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news.
For detectives, the first 48 hours after a murder are crucial in the search for clues. The public expects them to find Jill Dando's killer soon. The British detectives are planning to meet forensic experts, academics, and even witch doctors.
I remember the grimmest case, the Soham murders of schoolgirls Holly and Jessica. I felt I can't undo what's happened, but I can help explain it.
Ian Huntley was arrested and charged within a fortnight of the murders.
I've never murdered anyone. I've never raped anyone. What am I in jail for?
The parole board has to decide if Bronson needs to be kept locked up for the safety of the public. My biggest challenge was to persuade a jailed diamond thief to answer my letters. Martin Brunt, Sky News at the Old Bailey.
I'm Katie Spencer and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent.
Welcome back to the UK tonight. We're live in Belfast. Now, Northern Ireland has started to become a global hub for film and TV production. The industry has contributed more than £300 million to Northern Ireland's economy in the last 5 years, with many box office movies and television dramas being filmed and set right here. Well, let's have a quick look at just one of those.
Tensions are high. We're policing an area that could explode at any minute, and we're flying completely blind.
You coming here is an insult to this community.
I don't need anyone to protect me. I never have.
If we do this, there's no good.
Blue Lights, they're, of course, a favourite of mine. I've just binged the second series. Declan Keeney, the chief executive of Studioster, is here with me now. It's great, isn't it, all this TV and film that's being made right here in Northern Ireland. And your project is only going to help that. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so Studioster is a £75 million investment that connects to real-time virtual production, real-time visual effects. It's about us being able to offer world-class services here. We already do. When you look at the scale of the investment here in the last 10 years and all of the work that we get involved in. So Studioster is a large-scale virtual production complex, motion capture, and works at the very cutting edge of visual effects. A world-leading, globally unique facility built with and developed by Ulster University here in Belfast, and then in partnership with Belfast Harbour, and then sponsored by Northern Ireland Screen. And I think that's a critical part of why we're successful. It's the alignment. You know, it's a sandbox, Northern Ireland, for success in a way, because it allows us to bring together talent, infrastructure, the crew, the talented crew. We have 1,200 crew here, growing all the time with the work that the Ulster Screen Academy and others are doing at Ulster University again. And there's a world where we can provide world class. There's a reason why Game of Thrones came back here for 8 seasons.
Yeah, there's so much talent here, isn't there? Give us a scale of how much TV and film is being made.
Well, I mean, right now we just wrapped How to Train Your Dragon. That's at Belfast Harbour Studios. Massive production, multi-million pound feature film. Just gone into production 2 days ago is a new series of Game of Thrones, the Night of the Seven Kingdoms. And then we going into production in 2 weeks' time is Lisa McGee's new show, How to Get to Belfast from Heaven. So it's endless. Yeah, and what we're seeing also though is the growth and the interest to come here, because we get repeat business a lot. We have brilliant people here on the ground. We have the infrastructure. This is really critical for the success of these studios, to look at the crew, all of the things that wrap around that, the facilities. The facilities are world class in Belfast. We know this. We know that people tell us who come here that they are. We keep building and expanding on them. So one of the big projects that I'm involved with, the Studioster project, is a really building up our capability in Northern Ireland to compete at the highest level. We compete globally and internationally, and the services that are required now for this industry are changing radically with new technologies such as virtual production, and those facilities are needed. They're revolutionising how we make film, TV, games and animation.
Well, what's so clever is that if a director needs a specific location, he doesn't have to go there and spend a huge amount of money. He can come here and you'll create it for him.
Yes, well, that's true. So, you know, there's a lot of things we can do. We have a really diverse portfolio of locations here. But, for example, it would be quite tricky for us to create the Moroccan desert in Belfast Harbour. To film in the Moroccan desert here in Northern Ireland, I should say. And so what we can now do is with large-scale
Moroccan weather.
So now what we can do in Belfast Harbour is we can bring in the sand and we can wrap it in LED, seamless TVs, like a cave of televisions, and create environments and horizons that just look like the real thing.
Can you give me a scoop and tell me what the first production that's going to be booked in is?
We have a brilliant series coming in January that is absolutely very connected to this place. That's all I could say.
All right, OK, we look forward to it. Declan Keeney, thank you very much. Good to speak to you and best of luck. Well, a little bit earlier, I went out to find what matters most to voters here in Belfast, from Brexit to housing shortages. Here's just a snippet of what's engaging and enraging people as they prepare to head to the polls. Who are you going to vote for, do you think? Do you know yet?
I have no clue. I have, quite honestly, no clue.
Why?
Young people, like my friends, I ask them, like, do you know who you're going to vote for? Just in a conversation, but they don't know either. Young people don't know.
There's massive issues that haven't been aired properly. Brexit has been skimmed over, and the main parties are tiptoeing around that. So it was a lot of things I'm not happy about.
We're both uni students, so it's the idea of like what can they do for like our university, you know, what kind of positions were they considering after COVID, like how are they supporting students even in the years after?
Walk past so many people who don't have a home, yet we have so many empty buildings here and nothing's being done about it.
You hear promises, oh, we're going to help the housing crisis for young people, especially in Belfast, because you see the queues for house viewings down a mile, but you never really see anything.
Is the constitutional question still at the front of people's minds when they vote, or do you think things are changing?
I wish they were, but I think there's still a lot of people entrenched in history here, which is very demoralising for a lot of people, and it's not productive for anyone.
They have so many promises, but they don't really fulfill the promises, and I don't think they're looking at the important issues.
There of some of the shoppers out in Belfast in the beautiful sunshine that we've been experiencing today. Our senior Ireland correspondent David Blevins is here with me once again. We've covered a lot of ground in the last hour, haven't we? Covered a huge range of topics. Let's just get a final thought from you as the people of Northern Ireland, along with the rest of us, head to the polls.
Well, let me take you right back to the beginning of the programme when we heard from leading figures from the 5 main political parties in Northern Ireland. When we sat down with them today, we invited them to express their aspiration in just 3 words. We got words like strong and leadership and aspiration. But ultimately, the strongest and most regular used words were positive and progressive. That's not the kind of language we're used to hearing in Northern Ireland. So I think it gives us some hope that the political parties in Northern Ireland understand the desire from the students we've heard from at Queen's University tonight for change, and it will be up to the 18 new members of Parliament elected here in Northern Ireland to be part of the process of delivering that change, Jonathan.
OK, David, thank you very much. I'm going to buy you a pint. Student prices here. Let's go and do that, shall we?
Can't beat it.
Thank you very much. And that was a special instalment of the UK Tonight, live this evening from here in Belfast. And a reminder, you can catch up on all the highlights on our webpage. Just scan the QR code that you can see on your screen. Up next, it's The World with Yalda Hakim. But from all of us here in Belfast, in Northern Ireland, a very good night.